Cristina Voto est professeure associée tenure track à l'Université de Turin et a été 3 ans chercheuse postdoctorale au sein du projet européen ERC Facets sur les transformations de la représentation et de l'analyse de l'image du visage au temps de l'intelligence artificielle. Vous connaissez tous cet ERC Facets qui est dirigé par notre ami et collègue Massimo Leone. Elle a fait une longue partie de sa carrière en Argentine, entre autres, où elle a réalisé sa thèse de doctorat et ensuite elle est devenue professeure de sémiotique à l'Université de 13 de Febrero à Buenos Aires et elle est aussi commissaire de la Biennale de l'image en mouvement de Buenos Aires. Ses recherches portent sur le design, les cultures audiovisuelles, les arts numériques, les études prospectives et les études sur les genres et les queer. Elle a obtenu son doctorat en design à l'Université de Buenos Aires avec une thèse qui explore les relations entre le design audiovisuel et les théories du genre d'un point de vue sémiotique. Elle a publié une monographie en 2021 qui s'intitule Monstruos audiovisuales, agentividad, movimiento y morfología. Elle a été chargée des cours en conception audiovisuelle à l'Université de Buenos Aires, chargée des cours en théorie critique de l'architecture dans le Sud global à l'Université de La Matanza, toujours à Buenos Aires. Elle a été professeure invitée dans plusieurs endroits, et notamment à l'École des Arts et du Design de l'Université Jorge Tadeo Lozano de Bogota, et elle a été aussi chercheur invité à l'Université nationale de Colombie. Je lui donne la parole. Je pense que c'est toi qui gères tout. Oui. Et donc, merci d'être ici.
Ok. Spegni il microfono tu?
Oui.
Okay. Bien. Forse devi anche... Ecco.
Vous entendez?
Oui, oui, oui.
Vous nous entendez?
Oui.
Oui, merci.
Oui,
merci.
tout va bien.
So, thank you. I also speak in English, but all my presentation is translated in French, so you will...
Le son est coupé?
On n'entend pas. Tout d'un coup, on n'entend pas. Le micro de Cristina est coupé.
Juan, tu m'entends maintenant, n'est-ce pas?
Là, maintenant, oui.
Maintenant, oui. Alors, nous, on ne t'entend pas. Hein? Je ne sais pas ce qu'il s'est passé, parce que tout à l'heure, on t'entendait.
Ma se no passiamo il tuo computer
micro di
a
Cristina è coupé.
Allora, oui, laissons mon microphone.
Non,
je vais
non so
dire
perché.
no.
Sì,
Tu sai perché?
Ora dovrebbe funzionare.
Attends.
Il est toujours coupé le son de Cristina.
Ah, ma avevo il microfono spento.
Ah, là, c'est bon.
Esatto, funziona, giusto?
C'est bon?
C'est bon?
Très bien.
Merci. Merci pour votre patience.
On voulait faire les choses tellement bien qu'on les a fait trop bien et on a oublié la chose la plus importante.
Okay, perfect. So, as I was saying, I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to Maria Giulia and Juan for the invitation. And also, I'm very happy to follow the presentation of Andrea, because as you will see, there will be a lot of echoes and resonances between our works, even though I will work morely with the visual culture and text-to-images models. So, let's start. So my presentation aimed to explore the enunciative condition within machine learning computational models, and I will focus on the role of latent space. Latent space refers to the mathematical space where data is compressed, capturing its underlying patterns, features, and structures. This compression and encapsulation enable machine learning models to perform various tasks, including classification, generation, and transformation by encoding the essential characteristic of the data. Specifically, I will seek to understand whether a machine learning model initiates its chain of meaning making within the latent space. In this context, I will examine not only the vectorial organization of this space, but also the practices it involves and the possibility it enables, using the case of study of text-to-image models. To achieve my objective, I will analyze three aspects. So the condition of enunciation within AI-generated images, the enunciative praxis, of course, inspired by the work of Maria Giulia Dondero, within text-to-image models. And finally, my own proposal, let's say, my own hypothesis of research, the possibility of meaning making in latent space. I am interested in understanding the characteristic of enunciation when it occurs in the latent spatiality that organize machine learning tasks. And in this sense, I am to consider not only the morphological expressive organization of the space, but also the practices that it produces. And I will investigate these elements considering art as a privileged realm for reverse engineering and reconfiguring patterns toward otherwise neglected possibilities. Because as we said, as also Andrea said before, sometimes we accede to this topic through visualization, and sometimes it's art, one of the practices that is demanded to provide and to share this kind of visualization. So, of course, as a starting point, I use the concept of enunciation and spatiality through a semiotic perspective, and though that of spatial enunciation, spatial enunciation. And my interest lies in using this notion from the disciplinary toolkit as a benchmark to understand if enunciation in artificial intelligence system, and specifically machine learning computational model, can be thought as meaning making. So I go a little bit quickly in this part because it's just a recognition, let's say, about spatial enunciation. Because semiotic has always been interested in space and spatiality. Peirce, for example, believed that the perception was inherently driven by diagrammatic and therefore spatial functioning, and we already cited it before. Lotman also worked a lot with the problem of spatiality. And of course, semiotic further developed a specific reflection on spatial enunciation, understanding it both in, let's say, human spaces and non-human spaces. Today, we have, to face new, let's say, new challenges prompted by our digital culture, and I cannot remember the current call for paper for Signata, which I have the pleasure of coordinating alongside with Alumine Rosso and Enzo D'Armenio, titled Semiotic of Space in the Era of Computational Logic and Digital Practices, a Contemporary Perspective, where we are questioning, and we hope you can do it also with us, about and around the semiotic of computational spatiality. From a broader perspective, the semiotic analysis of space always necessitates an hypothesis about the content. So this hypothesis requires reconstructing the enunciative act upstream, not only as a logical presupposition, but also as an operation of constituting a ratio that is always at some least somewhat, let's say, difficilis, connecting an expression plane to content plane based on a grid of subjectivities and socially encyclopedic functions. So I wonder, does the same happen when we are faced with a machine learning model? And from my perspective, and considering my own research perspective, I think that to answer this question, we have to set a research hypothesis. If we hypothesize that dataset through which machine learning models are trained operate as archives, a hypothesis that I have addressed in several publications, considering the continuities of meaning between archives as collection of social cultural data and dataset as archiving of scientific data. And also I'm very interested in archive because I'm interested in this idea that archiving as a practice is a practice that has a let's say, a couple of millennia on its back. So I'm really interested in it. And also we can see continuities between archives and datasets, because datasets as archives always developed in measurable and numerically controlled space. So can we speak of spatial enunciation in machine learning models? So let me start with some data. So according to Every Pixel Journal, in 2023, 15 billion images were created via generative text-to-image computational model. Following the article, this quantity can be associated with the total number of images produced during the first 150 years of photographic technology from 1826 to 1975. Beyond mere comparison, this statistic underscores artificial intelligence's rapid and profound impact on our visual culture, where generative models manage vast amounts of visual data and AI-generated images have become ubiquitous across our iconosphere. Having a closer look at this phenomenon, on the user side experience, the interaction with text-to-image models begins by putting data into the interface, facilitating a dual-natured transition. And of course, I'm referring to the brilliant overture of this seminar by Maria Giulia Dondero. So verbal prompts that are translated into visual artifacts and visual artifacts that can be translated into textual outputs. And this two-way translation process is embedded by the training of algorithms on extensive data set, on the convention of putting of inputs into embedding, whether a word, an image, or any type of data, that can be represented as a point within a multidimensional space. It is in this spatiality that the essential characteristic and relationship of the data are captured latently, and this is why I'm interested in the latent space, allowing the model to interpret and generate a new data based on learned patterns when needed. So when data is represented in this manner, machine learning algorithms can perform complex operations such as classification, clustering, similarity researches, discerning patterns and relationship within the data by analyzing the distances and directions between vectors in the dataset's mathematical space. This vectorial representation forms the basis for converting the word, our material word, into a format that machine learning models can process and learn from. And this conversion takes place in the latent space, and we will come back to it. This initial definition offers an interesting starting point. Text-to-image generative systems not only influence the environment in which they operate due to their pervasiveness and accessibility, but are also shaped by the presence or absence of data in the dataset. And this implies that algorithms powering these models may learn from datasets that are not free from historical and cultural biases, including legacies of power structures such as colonialism, classism, and sexism. In this regard, the effectiveness of AI generative systems largely depends on the quality of the data they are trained on, highlighting the crucial role of human trainers and human-in-the-loop companies. These companies specialize in providing clean labeled datasets for AI training, which involves humans reviewing and categorizing images, videos, or other data, enabling algorithms to learn effectively. This method, known as supervision learning, is essential to ensure that AI systems recognize and respond appropriately to various situations. However, this approach is not without risk, often framed within power structure. A significant concern regarding human-in-the-loop companies is their reliance on cheap and precarious labor, particularly in the regions of Global South. Let's see an artistic example to get a deeper understanding. This is a very interesting book by Elisa Giardina Papa. She's a Italian-born but US-based artist that works a lot with AI, labor, and gender. And but she addressed the way in which machines are trained to see. In this book, she accounts how she worked as a human in the loop. So she documented the methods currently used to teach AI to capture, classify, and order the world, but instead considers everything in our lives, embodiments, and desire that defy the normative modes of categorization. For example, let's see this example. Maybe I can put it a little bit. Okay, no. For example, one example is the image of the couch woman, which consists of a couch whose pattern resembles the data of the t-shirt worn by the woman lying on it. And this was the task asked, no? Trace polygons around the borders of the requested object. In this instance, the algorithm for which Elisa Giardina Papa was cleaning data could not identify where the piece of furniture began and where the woman ended. The image of the woman was leaking into the couch, and that of the couch was leaking into the woman. From an algorithmic point of view, the image resided in an undivided, let's say, queer category of couch woman. So to facilitate algorithmic detection, the artist has to outline the contours of both the couch and the woman using polygonal circuits, the bounding boxes, and then label them with distinctly input. For example, also pronunciate performative utterances such as couch and woman. So practices such as data cleaning can lead to inherently biased AI system perpetuating implicit injustice, mainly if the data originated from cultural, social exploitation contents. In other words, bias embedded in the data and the architecture can enhance the computational model's ability to perpetuate harm and discrimination autonomously. This is why it is necessary to understand how machine learning and other algorithms have been embedded within human prejudice and discrimination, not simply at the level of data, but also at the level of the procedure, the prediction, and the logic. So to face this state of the art within AI and drawing lessons from archives and archive studies, it is possible to assert that every data set, much like every archive, can be considered as an object of knowledge that encompass both apparatuses and discursive transformation, embodying all the procedures and the fact that a specific field is willing to accept at a given time. It is in this light that dataset for machine learning training can be viewed as archive. So despite continually facing deficiencies, they serve as medium for transmitting knowledge and behavioral codes to algorithms. Consequently, data cannot exist in isolation. They must always be related to others and are inherently situated and interconnected within their environment through operalization, that is the transformation of the world into something measurable, and parametrization, that is the structuring according to specific parameters that govern the behavior of the model. Okay, so to understand this process, it is beneficial to draw upon the concept of Umwelt, at least from my perspective, as proposed by von Uexküll. According to von Uexküll, Umwelt consists of two interrelated components: the Merkwelt, which represents the world that makes an organism notice or perceive things, guiding its attention to shaping its perceptual realities, and the Wirkwelt that refers to the world where the organism can enact changes through its action, reflecting its capacity to influence and modifying its surrounding. So, applying phonics school framework to our discussion, it is possible to see a parallel with dataset. Data not only directs our perception, but also provides a platform for interaction and modification of the digital environment. As we interact with data through our action, whether by generating, modifying, or analyzing it, we continuously redefine the parameters of our digital umwelt. And this ongoing process illustrates the mutual definition and redefinition between us, our digital environment, where data, visuality, space, urban and non-urban, and images define each other. Okay. In our digital umwelt, though, another issue emerges: relationality. Scholars such as Donna Haraway with their exploration of cyborg, Bruno Latour with the actor network theory, Karen Barad through the proposal of an intra-actional relational ontology, Anna Singh advocating for a more the human sociality, and Timothy Morton in his exposition of hyperobjects have set the path for understanding our reality in terms of relationality and beyond binarism. Relationality has involved transcending dichotomous paradigms upon which Western culture has historically relied, realizing intricate webs of subjugating structure, including those between the human-machine, identity otherness, man-women, in favor of embracing plurality and symbiotic morphogenesis. Furthermore, embracing relationality requires reconceptualizing and visualizing diverse forms of interconnectedness, fostering an understanding of interdependence, as Judith Butler discussed, between humanity, the environment, and other other natural or artificial life forms. In other words, it entails recognizing an inter and intra-relationality that sustainability binds entity, humans, non-humans alike, connecting them to one another and to the world. Okay. So this issue brings me to the second interest of my presentation, so the enunciative pragmatics within text-to-image models. Because reflecting on all these elements might suggest that the data in the database of generative text-to-image models might function similarly to the virtualities of our imagination. And of course, I'm still basing my proposal on the studies and research of Maria Giulia Dondero. Realizing and visualizing certain statements and not others through the implementable data already present in the databases. But, and this is a big but, unlike human imagination, computational models subvert the traditional sequence through which knowledge is acquired. So text-to-image models must possess prior knowledge for generating or modifying an image, making the dataset crucial in shaping and defining the understanding of the task. So we can say that they simulate the virtuality of our imagination. This is my hypothesis, but still they can interact with our imaginary, and we will come back to it. Particularly, in machine learning models, the algorithms determines through unsupervised learning the necessary computation to perform its task optimally. This is why the dataset's quality will condition the model's ability to learn and perform its task accurately. So understanding visual culture in our algorithmic society necessitates reassessing what we mean by agency, which encompasses both human and artificial agents. From this perspective, and avoiding technophobic narratives or deterministic attitude, I align with Catherine Ailes, and I'm really grateful to Flavia Politi, PhD candidate from the University of Bologna, for introducing me this text. So I align with Catherine Ailes that inhabiting our present toward a sustainable and more than human environment necessitates, firstly, recognizing an enlargement of our agency through computational media design. This process, that is termed biotechno-evolution by the author, can open avenues for envisioning the realization of cognitive assemblages, i.e. hybrid processes where the very concept of personhood can be reconsidered within interactive human computational collectives. And I quote from Ailes, "Cognitive assemblages are pervasive in our contemporary world, from satellite image software to railroad switching controllers to electrical grid components and operators. Assuming that only the human participants in these assemblages are capable of meaning-making practices is an erroneous and anthropocentric, as believing that humans are the only species in the biosphere capable of creating meaning." So I'm interested firstly in this expanding and enlargement of our agency through the idea of computational media. And secondly, considering cognitive assemblages as a powerful epistemic tool to understand how they enable the transcendence of human historical dominance over machines, so fostering the development of AI-centered enunciation. So within this perspective, I propose to revitalize semiotics at 3 p.m. as an analytical lens, providing a framework to understand how artificial agents generate and disseminate meaning in our digital environment through a crucial concept, enunciative practices. And we might ask, why do image-to-text models produce certain types of visual outputs and not others? And what are the pragmatics underlying these assemblages? To answer this question, let's consider a few semiotic issues. First, to understand enunciation, we might refer to a model for relationality, as we already defined, and a mode of delegation, as already cited in these seminars several times and by several authors and scholars. Within this model, we can identify delegates who negotiate on our behalf the virtuality of the language into the actual realization of an utterance, such as the image. This recognition arises from considering and examining the role of entities and artifacts in scaffolding the environment while mediating and shaping our perception. So, therefore, when discussing enunciation and its delegation model, it is crucial to consider not only the patterns actualized in concrete acts, but also the potential norms and customs intervening in what Eco would define as the encyclopedia. So representing the shared body of knowledge of the culture, the encyclopedia contains all norms, behavior, customs accepted or rejected by a community. And due to its multimedia format and rhizomatic nature, it interconnects every element present in its body by shaping future enunciation and also modulate the past ones. So within this framework, and considering an AI-centered enunciation from an encyclopedic perspective, I think this might shed light on how an AI imagery might perpetuate existing inequities or, even better, challenge pervasive bias in our environment. This involves providing an analytical framework for understanding how enunciative practices, and particularly the generation of images through text-to-image models, are reflected in the images themselves. So I'm interested in how generative models transform cognitive assemblages, to quoting Hayes, into entities capable of delegating a message through an enunciative practice. In this regard, I sustain that the data archived in dataset profoundly influence the production of AI-generated images, reflective collecting memory, societal biases, and though playing a central role in shaping utterances, alike the encyclopedia influence the knowledge production. So, and let's consider an artistic example. So the model used for this artistic example is Stable Diffusion, and it has been used to create a prompt for generating a non-existent queer archive, a collection of images depicting love among working class queer people from Latin America between the years 1920. The artist is Felipe Rivas San Martin, who introduced the concept of minority prompt to define the enunciative practice at the base of his artistic project, which can be understood as a translation from textual inputs to visual artifacts aimed at counteracting the inherent bias in the database used to train generative models. By employing this method, Un archivo inesistente, this is the name of the project, seeks to expand the generative computational model's imaginary and expose it to a diverse range of artifact derivation, thereby mitigating the tendency to replicate existing bias, such as the predominant representation of white, cisgender, heterosexual European bourgeois males. By representing individuals typically excluded from databases due to their socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, and regional background, the enunciative praxis transforms the virtuality of the database into the realization of a more than human artistic gesture through the actualization of visual data. And in this sense, I invite you to take a look also to the glitches and the noises that are presented and that have been left by the artist. As always, they are in the ends, and it's interesting to wonder why, as humankind, we'll always be, and also as Western history has always been so interested in the reproduction of the end. Let's think to the David, for example, which the scale of the end and the whole body is completely different. And AI have such a big problem. Text-to-image models have such a big problem with the ends. So let's have a look to another example. Heteronormative culture has historically erased the queer experiences, and of course I'm referring to Foucault, Tchaikovsky, Munoz, especially within colonial legacies for those from global south and working class. And Felipe Rivas San Martin engaged in a critical exploration of AI through a retrofuturistic enunciative practice within a decolonial aesthetic, merging temporalities to address the omission of specific experience using computational algorithms to reimagine local queer past and reclaim an archive that could not previously exist. And furthermore, this inexistent archive operationalizes the praxis of enunciation in AI-generated models, considering the logic of data presentation and omission. The databases for training AI models are though viewed as virtual modes inherently containing both redundancy and omissions that reflect cultural biases. Though the projects aim to fill the databases voids by creating a repository that validates and brings to visibility those whose experience was suppressed. And it does so not only through the generation of images that presents what has been omitted, but also by using the glitches and the errors of the AI process. And this let me arrive to the final question at the end of my presentation, the question about the latent space. What interests me is to understand whether an automated computational model begins the chain of meaning production in the latent space. So a possible initial definition describes latent space as the ideal mathematical and dimension map that algorithms intrinsically possess for analyzing and relating the archived information in the data. But as we know, the map is not the territory, and in this sense, neither this spatiality is truly practicable. And the latent space gathers in itself all the characteristics that the data have, but only in potential. That means that we as human beings, we cannot access to this spatiality. And in this regard, it is the mathematical space where what an artificial neural network has learned during the training, and specifically during the phase where it learns to develop effective algorithms for performing certain tasks. It is a space for creation, for possibilities, where the coordinates of all possible outputs are defined. However, it is a pure space, an unlimited possibility. Yet, when a computational model is trained, the space of possibility narrows. In this sense, the latent space takes shapes during the compression of input data, namely the training data, and during the step preceding the output, the step that usually remains invisible to the human eye. So, but how does it work? It works thanks to computational models trained to learn the structural similarities between data. The latent space takes shape through the mapping of this similarity. And this mapping is the key aspect for understanding deep learning. Deep learning allows artificial intelligence to simulate human capabilities and recognize patterns to translate image, text, sound, and other data into accurate simulation. Training a computational model to learn similarity means, in fact, teach it to quantitatively classify data by learning their feature. And this feature can be mapped by the model and can be thought as a, let's say, quasi-science in Peircean tradition. That is, abstraction concepts, or perhaps, maybe better to say, I'm not really sure about it, since science, since the features mapped in the latent space by the algorithms of computational model have a peculiarity. They are quantifiable. But this learning requires a fundamental step, a simplification of the data themselves so that it is possible to find patterns. As the neural network learns, it identifies the characteristic of the data and maps, simulating the learned patterns through the recognition of similar features. But what kind of similarity are we talking about? A similarity that we could think in terms of topological and quantitativity. This is a representation of what I'm talking about. No? So this, from an input data, there is this mapping of all the possible features extracted by the data, and they are spatialized by similarities and quantitative terms analysis. Okay, so models map the latent space by organizing everything they can learn in the most probable and efficient configuration possible, so that when acquired later, they can reproduce it with the least effort. the most efficient arrangement to retrieve something, as in everyday life, is to put together data that share similar characteristics. This allows models to build spaces where relationship and similarities can be created on different levels, and in a well-trained model, they can enable the exploration of paths beyond the conventional taxonomies. This is why it is possible to say that the latent space gives us a structured simulation of the information in the data through a quantitative map. With one clarification, what we define as the simulation of a spatial enunciation, then, is the concatenation of the possible relationship of the data position that will be recognized as similar by the model. And this is the key question. Perhaps some of you have been reminded of a fundamental text for understanding, with this definition of last definition of latent space. Perhaps someone of you have reminded a fundamental text for understanding the artistic avant-garde of the last century. And I'm referring to the new vision brought by Laszlo Moloinaghi in 1947, where he wrote, and I quote, "Space is the relationship of position between bodies." And when we think of the latent space, aren't we facing a space where the simulation of the relationship occupying the position of the data is mapped? And so I wonder, has there been a shift in our way of conceiving spatiality and disembodying shifting from bodies to information? To answer the question, which is the last one, I swear, I propose revisiting Moloinaghi's text. Oh, okay, I missed it. This is the text. Nearly 100 years ago, in 1928, Laszlo Moloinaghi published the first edition of his book, The New Vision. The book took shape from the ashes that the first mechanized world conflict had scattered in the cultural debate of the time. And it does not seem coincidental to me that in a present marked by armed conflict, where technology has always marked the direction of warfare, this reference becomes meaningful. The new vision explores the possible way for artists to reappropriate the meanings and the means of image production. The early decades of the last century were a period of intense and accelerated visual experimentation. Photography, cinema, graphic design began to deconstruct and reassemble each other in hybrid combination through composition that sought a new way for art making, and also in a political sense through the mechanization of reproducibility. And Moloinaghi and his pen, let's say, focuses on three central aspects in the new vision: matter, volume, and space. Three design dimensions for acting on a new vision of the world. At an historical moment where the camera lens became an agent capable not only of framing reality, but also of reproducing it, the new vision is open for through strategy and artistic combination gestures, where mechanic making is inextricably intertwined with human making. But Moloinaghi was not only the one questioning the relationship between human action and machine action. Of course. In those same years, artists like Anne Bierman and Anna Hoch began to reassemble their present through gestures of the composition and recomposition of images disseminated in the media in the form of layered photomontage, where reality becomes matter, volume, and space through the combination of different design and artistic knowledge. We do arrive at another peculiarity of spatial system. Being open, or at least more inclined to re-enunciation, a characteristic that cannot be accidental, but must somehow depend on structural confirmation of the spatial enunciation, I believe that these confirmations are particularly related to the active role of the enunciatee of the spatial system, who is responsible for always and continuously reactivating the spatial system prepared by the enunciator. And if this is true for any text, this is even more for places where the body of the enunciatee and their actions become a part of the expression plane. And this underscores the importance of considering not only the production pole of the text, but also the interpretative pole within the enunciative structure, because it is the enunciate who realized a text otherwise only actualized by the enunciator, though having the possibility to subvert and modify it. So re-enunciating a space means, in fact, constructing a new semiotic function, a new logic of coherence, starting from a series of expressive characteristics of the space. So let's go directly to Moloney. In the third chapter of the new vision, he writes, every cultural period has its own conception of space, but it takes time for people consciously to realize it. This is the case with our own spatial conception. Even in defining it, considerable hesitation prevails. This uncertainty is evident in the words we employ, and the words increase the confusion. What we know of space in general is of a little help in assisting us to grasp it as an actual entity. And isn't it perhaps what is happening today with the latent space? In support of his thesis, Moloney examines the multiple words through which space is defined in his time. And here we have the visualization as he reproduces it in his book. So after this graphic representation of the semantic confusion, let's say, regarding spatiality, at the beginning of the 20th century, Moloney moves on to his own definition. According to the first, space is a reality, and from there he continues, space is the positional relation of body. Therefore, spatial creation is the creation of positional relations of body. So let's try to appropriate this definition and test its effectiveness in a spatiality where the relationship between human and mechanic is completely hybridized. Can we say that the latent space simulates a positional relation of information? I believe the answer is yes. In latent space, information can take different forms depending on the model and the data through which the model was trained, the visual structures of the data, the sound structure, the semantic dimension, or even the configuration of poses as data characteristic. Thanks to the information archived in them, the latent space and the spatial relationship they map, the proximity, the distance, the continuity, the discontinuity they occupy, depending on the similarity, is the result of the simulation of the mathematical distances that exist between the data in the latency of the mathematical space. Every image that artificial intelligence can generate occupies a position within the latent space. And when, as human, we request a retrieval, it simulates a spatial enunciation. So an image created through the visualization of the latent space accounts for the extent of all the information present in the image, as if hundreds of thousands of images could emerge from the latencies all at once. In this sense, using artificial intelligence to create art can help us to expose entire latent spaces and make tangible, so practicable, the perspective of artificial intelligence on the world. Perhaps, starting from this aspect, we can reflect on the latent space as a spatiality where all types of media are in a positional and informative relationship relationships, such as that an image can simulate a poem, the poem a song, the song simulate a new image, etc. And I think that this can be a very interesting perspective for understanding a more than human enunciative perspective. So, and I go to conclusion, which is just a wrap up. Exploring enunciation within the latent space of machine learning models reveals significant insights into how computational models generate and interpret meaning. This is because latent space shapes the fundamental environment where the artificial neural network map the knowledge acquired during the training. This space not only facilitates the dynamic generation of creative possibilities, but also highlights the complexity of how data-driven models reflect and perpetuate cultural bias and societal norms. By examining the interaction between in the enunciative practice within physical body and digital spaces, we uncover the intricate process through which meaning is discursively constructed. In particular, the concept of spatial enunciation helps us to understand how computational models, such as text-to-image, navigate and reshape the relationship between data points to produce more or less coherent outputs. In this regard, I think it is vital to emphasize the importance of recognizing the role of datasets as modern-day archives. These datasets not only store vast amounts of information, but also embed historical and cultural data that can influence the output of the AI model. In conclusion, the latent space serves as a critical site for investigating the enunciative condition of machine learning models. It is a space where the interplay of data, algorithms, and human inputs continuously redefines the boundaries of meaning. Future research should continue to explore this dimension, particularly focusing on how enunciative practices within AI can be harnessed to foster inclusivity and diversity in digital environment. By doing so, we can better understand the potential and limitation of AI in shaping our cultural and perceptual landscapes, ultimately leading to a more informed and responsible technological advancement. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Cristina, for this interesting. Quelqu'un peut, s'il vous plaît, aller bloquer le redémarrage de l'ordinateur là-bas? On ne peut pas le faire par ici?
Non,
Je pense que non. Je pense que tu dois aller là avec ça. Oui, oui, merci beaucoup. I would probably begin. I see Alumine. She has a question for Cristina, but I would like to ask you a preliminary question. Because I'm sure that other participants will go deeper in the issues you talked about. My question is a very general question. I agree with the question of oppositions. Obviously, it's mappable positions and relations between similar data and dissimilar data. But from this cartography, and from this simple, I would say, oppositions, very structuralist as you describe them, how may we go the step to make meaning making? I would say that it's not enough to have these to map these positions, even if we can obviously perceive clusters, not only similarities, but similarities that are more similar than others, so different densities in a sense of similarities and dissimilarities. But I would say we need probably orientation to go further. We probably need, yes, to go out from the latent space through the agentivity of the prompt, the agentivity of the diffusion models, of the coupling of embeddings, and so on. But you can only answer about orientation, probably.
No, it is very, I wasn't thinking, as you already spotted, I wasn't thinking about orientation, and I think it can be,
it lacks.
Exactly, absolutely. Now I realize it. No, but it's very interesting. Yeah, also because, I mean, being an n-dimensional space, orientation has to be taken into consideration. And yes, yeah, I was in my presentation, I was trying, I mean, I'm starting to understand if it's of interest through a semiotic perspective to focus on latent space as a source for enunciation. And I was trying to focus on the problem of simulation, because I thought that that mapping might be a first layer to understand how both the legacy of logic of simulation and both the concrete simulation that this data produce might work for a semiotic perspective. But of course, taking into consideration this spatiality, orientation was lacking.
Yes, because there is no enunciation.
Absolutely.
There is not the direction.
Absolutely.
In the coupling, in the clusterings.
And also, this is very interesting, considering my interest in gender-related questions. Orientation is always a category super interesting for understanding gender. Both in genre terms, I mean, also opening to the aporia of gender and genre. I mean, they are both directed to some orientative arrow. So thank you.
About the gender, thanks a lot. About gender, I think that there will be other question, but we see that DALI, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, they operate in a very, very, very different way regarding genre, because you know that DALI almost exaggerates in changing the prompts to be the most politically correct possible, and then the images are not really mirroring the prompts. It's very we cannot speak about a general yes, it really depends on different models. Alumine, do you want to come here to ask the question, or you can also be connected, because it's our son. You can shout, but I think that
well, I would have preferred to.
OK. L'autre fois, on avait fait comme ça, de se rapprocher de la source qui est entre son ordinateur et la mienne.
Mais
OK.
je me mets là, c'est si je
Ah.
me mets là. OK. Well, thank you very much. I have a lot of questions because it was fascinating. And I'm happy that I can keep talking with you later. So I will try to reduce all of them in 3 questions, and I will coming back to the artistic curatorial production and the issue of the enunciation. When you are saying that enunciation is a delegation, and at a certain point a delegation of responsibility. So I was thinking about the intervention of artists using AI, mostly for underline the bias of the machines. And I was thinking that finally, when they are using AI, they have to intervene more. I mean, the artwork generated with artificial intelligence need more instances of enunciation and mediation. I don't know if you agree with that, but I mean, the artists are using the machine for highlighting the problem of using the machine, but the result alone is not highlighting the bias and the problem of the AI. So it's like the enunciation of the artist is like the production of the AI systems or tools. I don't know how to say it. They are like an enunciation, enunciate. So the artist has all the time to be present, and the curator has to be present, because if not, there is nothing different from the use of Midjourney for pleasure or for entertainment, and Midjourney used for an artistic or curatorial mission. I don't know, what do you think about that kind of reflection? And the last one is, if you think that the debate about the danger of art based of AI is justified, or it's just a new I mean, fear that people have in front of technological technical new tools as the I don't know photographic disposal.
Of course, yeah. Every technological introduction brought some kind of fear. Also, the printing and the spreading of the books were passed through that, let's say, technophobic, deterministic attitude. So I think that this danger is, I mean, the perception of this danger is just motivated through those rhetoric. I mean, and considering works of art as enunciated enunciation, I think it's absolutely an interesting perspective. In this sense, I think that the work of art that I showed to you, the unexistent archive, was working in that same perspective. And what I think is most interesting of that project, apart of the beauty of the same idea of a minority prompt, which I think is really nice, is also the willing to not clear and willing to not clean the glitches of the machine. So in this way, even though through the final utterance, we can see in acts, let's say, a form of alliance between human and non-human agents. And in this sense, I think that this might answer to this idea of the text as enunciated enunciation through.
Do you think that is a necessity? I mean, if we leave the image produced by the artificial intelligence, l'archivo inexistente, just as a product of the machine, have the same? No, it needs the artist intervention.
Yes, of course. Yeah. It is a formal ally.
My question was about the need of more and more instance of mediation in contemporary art using AI. Because if not, it just another product of the machine.
Yes, mediation, absolutely. But in my perspective, I mean, it has to be also a more aware form of alliance. I mean, so to avoid all the debate around authored rights, which is a debate that I think is really annoying AI art production. But yes, I do agree with your perspectives.
It is prop of the contemporary art, and
absolutely.
The last thing was beautiful to remind Moholy-Nagy text. And I was thinking that at the same time, or a bit before, Picasso was introducing the journal in the artworks, and the Cubists were introducing piece of chairs and piece of reality in the, and thinking about that, and thinking a new way of, and in Buenos Aires, in Montevideo, the los concretos were thinking about the same. So the reflection of the space was already at the beginning of the 19th century, and I wanted to share with you a very important exhibition made in MoMA, The Machine as Seen at the End of the Mechanical Age, that was organized in the 60s. And they were thinking about that already. What is the name? The Machine as Seen at the End of the Mechanical Age.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
So no, thank you. It was amazing.
Thank you, Anne. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions dans la salle? Non, une pause bien méritée. Alors, il y aura du café et quelque chose à grignoter. Merci encore, Cristina.